Go, I guess. I think we're live. I don't know. I'm sorry, everybody. My deepest apologies. Technical issues as usual. I had 2 really good weeks, so I was due.
So they missed me doing my Kenny Johnny Cash rendition?
Yes, they did.
Kenny Cash?
I'm not doing that again. I only do sing once a night. Are we on?
Yeah, we're on.
Hey, folks. Does this mean we get to go late?
No.
Welcome, 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 welcome. It's a lovely June night here in New Brunswick. Welcome to our Purple Heart Project. What do we call this?
Live
YouTube workshop, substitute for date night during the coronavirus. And tonight we're working on Angie's desk. It's a bed desk with a side-hung dovetail drawer. Never did that before. We're going to get to it tonight. We're actually in the process of cutting the dovetails. So in addition to doing this for your entertainment and education, we also do it as a means of raising money for our Purple Heart Project. I'll give it to you quickly. 6 times a year, keep your fingers crossed on this year, we bring in 6 at a time combat wounded veterans along with 6 civilians who come to the class as paying students. It's a 6-day class, starts Monday morning at 8 o'clock, goes until 11 p.m. every night for 6 days. Learn to literally be able to build a piece of furniture with just hand tools from rough lumber. Of course, we've run into some hard times with the coronavirus. We've had to move both our May class and our June class into later dates. And we haven't officially made that announcement yet, but it looks like July is going to end up being moved as well because they're not opening the border yet.
August. August too.
Don't say that yet. Anyway, we bring them in, we cover airfare, hotel, meals, all expenses, send each vet home with, because we have had 3 females, each vet goes home with approximately $3,500 it changes in tools. And thanks to Jack Lane and our bench brigade, every vet will end up with a beautiful bench to work on when they get home. We are going to have Kevin Smira. I started this a while back. Every time we do this, we have...
That's Kevin's flag.
Oh, yeah, right. That is Kevin's flag. We have one of our previous vets come on and tell you their experience with taking the class. So you hear it firsthand and you know who it is that you're supporting. So if you would like to participate, you can do one of 2 things. Actually, you can do one or both. We can always use financial support. It's an expensive venture, and we never let money stand in the way, so we'll pay for it some way. If you want to be part of it, we welcome you. It's a great feeling to be able to do it. Go to our website, RobCosman.com. The link will be on there so that you can do it through the website. Any other means takes way too much. YouTube takes over 30%. So Kevin will come on and explain his side of it. This is Angie. And Angie's who we're building the desk for. Angie works for us. She's Ken's cousin. And Angie is the one who does such a great job packaging our T-shirts. And you'll see her little symbol with her A on there. And speaking of T-shirts, we have 3 now. You can get one to help us spread the cause. Wood for good. In army green, wood is good. And our teal, which is Angie's color, wood doing good. And I'm going to take you a little farther onto wood is good tonight. We're going to introduce you to something that's really, I think, really cool. Now, I need to say a thank you to Jake. Spin the camera around, Jake. They always like to see your face. Come on, come on, come on. They'd like to see you. There you go. Stop right there for a second.
I was working on the balancing of the camera tonight.
Then in the very back, we have my oldest son, Rex. Rex is in charge of security. He keeps Frick safe. There'll be a lot of people after Frick tonight.
He's got my back.
Frick and Alpha One Studios is the producer. Over here to the left is Megan, Jake's wife. She is tracking donations because at every $1,000 increment, we throw in another $100 gift certificate that we draw for at the end of the night. Don't forget to register for the draw. It doesn't cost you anything. You can just register. And you can cash your $100 gift certificate in at our store, pick up any tools that you need. Big shout out to Colonel Luther, who's out in Seattle watching, Super Dave. Special hello to Artis Benson up in Alaska. Super Dave is in New York. They'll be answering questions. Ken will be on a little bit later. If you have questions, ask them. So quickly, format is every second week we do a question and answer. So last week was Q&A. Next week will be Q&A. We'll send out an email on Wednesday, and you can submit your questions, and we will address some of those and some of the live ones that come in. Don't forget to register for our newsletter. The link will be on there. That's how you get notified of this stuff. It's always very content rich. This month's newsletter is on dust collection. So we go through and talk to you all about ours and our experience in putting it in and what we used to have before. And then on the opposite weeks, we work on Angie's desk until we get it finished. I think, I forget? Oh, yes. I'll hit this. Actually, we'll come back to that when we get a few more people on. We'll talk to you about some of the things that have been donated that are up for auction that folks have generously provided so that we can raise additional funds for Purple Heart. And I'll talk about that too a little bit later. Okay, so here we go. Keep the questions. If something comes in and it's not everybody's reading the chat, so if it's a really good question, shout it out. And finally, by the way, if you are a combat wounded vet that has been to one of our classes or is coming to one of our classes, please say that in the chat so Megan can spot it. Shout it out. Tell me about it, and we'll give you a shout out. Love to be able to connect with you. Okay, so here we go. So there's our drawer back, sorry. Top right designates the back. Top right designates the front. The last thing we did last week was get the drawer fronts done. Now, because these are half blinds, what I'm going to do, so there's how we are going to put it together. I'm going to take the drawer front one at a time, and with the help of some extra eyes, Rex, would you grab that?
Is it?
No, it's not. It's right down there on Ken's bench. Place my headgear. What I want to do is I want to make sure. Actually, I need these glasses. They're a little stronger.
We have a quick MASH question because you asked.
A MASH question? Oh yeah, go ahead.
They said trivia. So this is from Aaron Fenn. He says, what is the name of the psychiatrist?
Sidney Freeman? Really? Give me a tough one. Come on. And by the way, Sidney died not that long ago. Okay, his famous quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, take my advice. Put on your pants and slide on the ice." He said that twice on the very last episode and somewhere and on his very first appearance. Okay, so I'm right on the line on these, but what I'm going to do is carefully go in there and just undercut a little bit on the inside of the joint. So I'm working on the side you see. I'm undercutting on the inside. And it's too difficult to explain right now why I do that, but when we get there, which we will, you'll say, oh, right. So that's the right side. This would be the left. Now this has got a lot of fuzz on it because it was on the back side. So I'm just going to scrape that off.
Okay, I'm just gonna start off with the people that we have here, the vets from classes. Gary Burnett is here.
Hi, Gary. Gary's always here with us.
Yes,
Great to have you, brother.
Bob Abbott.
Robert.
And of course, Kevin.
Kevin Smira. We'll hear from Kevin.
Pete.
Kevin, make sure you get your makeup right. Pete Ambrose.
Yep.
Pete Ambrose has become a fixture. If he wasn't on, we wouldn't be on.
Sean McDermott.
Hey, brother Sean, how are you? And Angela, don't forget Angela.
Ray.
Cool Ray from Louisiana.
Kevin Burris.
Okay, Kev.
And Neil Weatherhead.
Wheel Netherhead.
And Jake Torolla.
Have I told that story lately about Kevin or Neil's infamous half-blind dovetails? So for those of you who haven't heard, hopefully that will be most. So Neil's combat wounded vet. Army?
Most
Actually,
likely.
I thought he was Marine. If he
No, he was Army.
Army. Anyway, so Neil lost an eye as a result of shrapnel. And because these guys were working so fast, come with me, Jake. We're working so fast in the class, they were running out of stuff to do. So I said, well, what we'll get you guys to do is make a tool tray for each bench. So on this side of the bench, we'd have a tool tray attached. Now, I'd have to point them out to you because we don't have any on these, but some of them are sitting up in there. But it's a nice dovetail. So it comes out here, piece of walnut comes out here about 6 inches, and then a piece of maple coming across here, and then a piece of walnut. So the dovetail really stands out. And they would dovetail them up, and then I said, write a little note on there for future vets. So on Neil's, and he did a through dovetail, on Neil's he wrote the best half-blind dovetail in the West. And I was back there on the last day spraying them, and I saw that, and I said, oh, should I tell him it's a through dovetail, not a half-blind? So I finally did. I said, Neil, I said, I meant to point this out to you. I said, just so that you know, I said, this is a through dovetail, not a half-blind. He said, Rob, half-blind. Duh. Such a sense of humor. Can I say that?
Such a sense of humor.
Such a sense of humor. Okay. So now we
also
got
have Carlos Cawthon and John Beck that are coming to classes this year.
Hey, Carlos,
Hopefully.
I remember talking to Carlos and John
Beck?
Beck. Both of you. Welcome, gentlemen. We're going to get you here. We will get you here no matter how long it takes. Have no fear. All right, so this is the back. I'm putting them together so we can gang saw them. Just makes it a little bit faster. Now we got to do a little bit of math. And I'll take an opportunity to teach you on this. So here's what. Actually it's a half blind, so it's not quite as critical, but we have to allow for a groove to hold the drawer bottom. And I would prefer to have the drawer bottom run between the pins. Because the tail is longer, I can easily stop the groove in somewhere between here and here, so it doesn't show all the way through. But if you place it, you don't want to place the groove. So let me show you an example. If I made my groove right here, if I did a 1/4 inch groove that was right here, I would have to stop the groove in the half pin, because if I ran it right through, it would take out this part of the pin, and you'd see it on this side. So I would have to stop the groove somewhere around here, so it didn't come all the way out and show here, and I would have to stop it in this piece as well. But if I just moved it up a little bit and have it run from here to say here, then it'll run between the pins. If you envision this piece of wood being this piece and this piece, this piece and that piece, I can run it in between the pins, so I don't have to worry about this piece at all, and I only have to stop it in one piece, which is the tailboard. Now, because this is a half blind, I'm going to let it run all the way through, because that will be tucked down into the joint. You'll never see it anyway. So the only thing I'm wanting to consider is I want to make sure that I keep it somewhere between here and here, so I don't have to worry about taking out part of the pin. That might be a little clearer when we actually do this.
Another MASH question.
Yeah?
What was
It's going to be a fun night.
for what reason did Frank Burns get his Purple Heart? And that's from Bobbert.
Bobbert!
Too easy.
Come on. He had a shell fragment in his eye. Really, Frank? An eggshell fragment? Well, it happened in a war zone. What happened to his Purple Heart? It was given to a baby who ended up getting nicked by a piece of shrapnel whilst in the womb of his mother. Bob, you really surprised me with such a softball. You'd think that was an interview question. Now you threw me off. Okay, what are we doing, Jake? I'm going to use my marking gauge to measure this.
Does it have to be a 1/4 inch groove?
No, it's not going to be because I don't want it doesn't need to be that heavy. So I'm going to set it right about there. So if it's right there, it'll definitely be inside of that one. And I'll go over here and make sure, well, actually they're the same one, aren't they? Because we gang sawed them. So if we take this back here and just put a mark on there. What am I hearing? So we put a mark right here. So this is where our groove is going to be. And that's going to be the bottom of it. I can put a heavier mark on that. And what are we going to use for a drawer bottom? Based on how wide it is, how big it is, that's another important consideration. You don't ever want the drawer to be heavier than it needs to be. In fact, one of the reasons why we use dovetails, if we made this any other kind of a joint, you have to have a fair bit of meat in this piece and in that piece in order to give some strength and rigidity to the joint, which means your drawer sides would have to be thicker, and consequently the drawer is going to be heavier. But we can shrink these dimensions to make a nice light drawer, but when you glue that dovetail up front and back, that goes a long way in strengthening these otherwise very thin drawer sides, which makes it nice and light and airy and easy to move. Same thing with the drawer bottom. The drawer bottom is going to be housed on 4 sides. It's going to be sitting into a groove here, here, and here, and it's going to be screwed to the bottom. So you wouldn't have to have a 1/4 inch. We can easily get by. Have we got an 1/8 inch material?
Ply?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to make the bottom out of a piece of, maybe we should make it out. Let's make it out of a piece of solid wood. You know what we'll use? Some yellow cedar. Angie would love that.
I don't know if you have any yellow cedar wide enough.
We'll glue it up. Right. So we're going to make this out of solid wood, which would be more fun, and it'll smell great. We're going to use yellow cedar. And if you have not heard of yellow cedar, this is, I'm just going to do something real quick, and then we're going to get, this comes from British Columbia. That would be BC to those Canadians on there. Yellow cedar and Alaska, that's true, maybe even in Washington State, is extremely expensive. It is a beautiful, fine textured wood, but like Kramer would say, it's all about the surface area, Jerry. Now, we're going to bring this over to Megan.
Whoa.
What?
Strong.
Strong what? How would you describe it? Fragrant.
Fragrant.
Special effects here are really hurting.
I know, I should say in your face.
What was it? Well, that was from Megan, or was that?
What?
Cedar?
I caught.
What do you think?
It smells nice. Strong.
It is. If you've never smelled yellow cedar, oh, you need to get some. I could sniff that all day. Beautiful wood, gorgeous, and super expensive, unbelievably expensive. So save it. Take that home. Okay, so I can get away with I can get away with a groove that we're going to custom. So we'll probably cut that just 1/8 of an inch. So let's go ahead and lay that out now. Need to move this along. Get these.
We're getting lots of MASH questions. Maybe we should just save them.
Oh, no, bring them on where we're going. I love this.
What is the name of Radar's racing mouse?
Oh, the mouse. Okay, give me a minute. His rabbit was Babette because Megan named hers Babette. And his racing mouse. Oh, shoot. Hold on. Jake, do you remember?
I'm not digging you out of this hole.
His racing mouse. Now, the reason I know this is because Charles gave it some amphetamines to make it run faster, and he got hooked on them himself. And this is the first time Radar stood up to somebody in authority. Don't you ever. Oh, am I going to have to cave on this one? I don't remember. Hopefully they'll tell us. Okay, so that's going to be the bottom of the groove. We're going to go 1/8 of an inch. I've been stumped. Any more questions?
Yeah, I'll get them. Question from Chad. He said, is the dovetail Rob uses the best one? If not, why does he like that one over other ones?
Pardon?
I'm going to have to get some clarification.
Yeah, what did you mean by?
Well, answer this. What's your favorite type of dovetail?
Favorite type of dovetail?
Which one do you
Through, half line, houndstooth.
Houndstooth?
one.
Oh, probably. Yeah, you know that's actually an interesting question because, of course, everybody gets excited about doing a through dovetail, and when we teach the half blind on that day, they really get turned on by that. I would probably say that the standard through dovetail is probably my favorite. I just think there's something about it, the geometry of it, that just turns my crank. Whoops, wrong one. I'm so thrown by Radar's mouse. Shoot, I can't believe I can't remember that.
I think that was Luther's question, actually.
Was it? Yeah, that sounds like him.
And the answer is Daisy,
Daisy?
according to him.
Can you
Well,
trust him?
that might be the name of it in South Carolina.
Daisy. Okay, now we need to have, we can do this with dividers, we need to have a little half pin on either side. This is by the way, this is where the groove's going to come through. So we need to have a little half pin on either side of the groove. And then up here, we don't want to, actually, we're not going to worry about that, but we will anyway. We're going to come down from the top a little bit. No, I can't do that. I can't do that. I got to have a little more. I need some meat. I don't want to have that half pin so close to the top that this becomes a fragile piece. So I'm going to go there and there. And again, this will make a little more sense when we actually get it drawn out. And on this one, we'll have the slope of the tail. And then, you know what I did, Jake, is this, yeah, I need to add this down here now, which I did. So that comes across here and comes up. So just so that you know, and I know, this is actually going to be where our groove sits. We got this piece sitting on top of it, which is going to be flat because you don't want it cutting into the groove. And then we just have that little space, so we really only have room for 2 pins in here. So what we can do is just take that space and divide it by whatever we want. It'll be too much just to come up with.
You meant to say 2 tails.
2 tails. Yeah. Let me do it and then I'll explain it. Okay. Get this drawn out first. Shoot. Now I can't tell where I was. that one, and that one. How's our count, Frick?
416 right now.
We didn't we lost a bunch with our false start.
Of course not.
Yes. Okay, so here, let's take a look at this. This top of the drawer, bottom of the drawer. We're going to cut our groove right here to house the bottom. Then we've got a half pin here. This half pin obviously has to stay with a perpendicular or a plumb cut on this side. If you went down like that, you'd be cutting into the groove. Then we have our slope. We have our tail. We have our interior pin sloped on both sides. We have our tail. These are the same size. And then the same half pin that we would normally call it if it was a normal through dovetail. Same half pin we have here, we're going to have up here. I always like to hold the drawer back down from the top so that it does not drag when you open your drawer. Okay? So we'll go ahead and identify what is waste with an X. So these pieces identified with the X will all be removed. I'll carry over here to the front as well, which just helps us when we actually come to cutting. Okay, we want to make sure this piece is standing plumb. If it is, it makes it easier to develop the skill of being able to make plumb cuts and angled cuts if that piece that you're working on is always standing plumb in the vise. So we'll go in here. I'm using my new little experimental. I actually meant to get a new handle on that this week, but I didn't get time to. We've been a little on the busy side.
Mash question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What Canadian crop did Winchester heavily invest in? That one comes from Brian Proper.
Winter wheat, I think. Pretty sure it was winter wheat. Keep them going.
Where was Adams Ribs located?
Chicago. I can almost remember the phone number too, but not quite. Dearborn and something. That was Henry. And they never got to eat them. You ordered the ribs and you forgot the coleslaw? I'm an amateur. Really careful. Actually, I don't think it was wheat. I think it was sugar beet, maybe. And that was a good question. So tell me if somebody comes up with an answer. Really critical, absolutely critical that the cut across the end of the board be perpendicular to the face. That means when you put a square on it, it has to be square. Angled cut down the face is not nearly as critical, not even critical actually, because it is the template and it simply has to be matched when cutting the second piece. Plumb cuts are important. No more mash?
And they want to know when you have so much time to watch all that TV.
That's a good question. Well, we used to travel. We didn't have TV. We didn't have television. We got rid of that way back in 1991. But we used to have a TV and VCR or video to back then. And I used to love watching MASH from university days. And I got my kids hooked on it. So they would buy me all the series as they would come out. And every time we traveled anywhere, we would have that playing. And we'd always do MASH trivia. So at least my older kids know it as well as I do, and sometimes even better. Rex has got a knack for remembering stuff like that. Okay, so So we got our backs done, we got our fronts done. We're ready to go ahead and process the pins. So I want to show you something, I'll give you a bit of an update. So in our online workshop, which by the way, if you haven't signed up for, I don't know what you're waiting for, and you get a free month. On our online workshop, we're currently working on this, what do we call this, Jake? Standing desk. Left me. And I just going to give you a quick update because we had major mistakes. So many mistakes in this, not even funny. In fact, sometimes I think I did on purpose, but I didn't. So it's not put together yet. That's why that's not sitting down. That's the last thing. Complicated piece. So the bottom section is going to be, actually the top of the bottom section is already sprayed and finished. The bottoms, this will be masked off, and the bottom section minus the drawers will be sprayed and finished. This top piece is not actually attached to this yet. That was sprayed and finished separately. This piece was sprayed and finished separately, and this section was sprayed and finished separately. Then we can go in and assemble all the pieces. If you tried to build something like this and spray it all at one time, you'd be spraying up here, whatever you're doing. By the time you finish one end, the other end, this end already would be dry and you'd be dealing with overspray constantly. So just point out some of the mistakes I made. The first big one was this. Yeah.
Side.
Oh, we had to do this one too.
Well, I know, but the side one was the
Right.
first mistake.
Just making so many, I can't remember them. So if you look over here, apologize to those of you who already seen this. If you look over here, it's well hidden, but there's actually a little drawer in there. And I'll see if I can get it to pop out by. We're actually concocting a way of making this. Jake, what have I got that I can slap over that?
Just puff it out.
I have to cover the hole.
Oh.
Question from Ed and Eric. They asked the same MASH trivia question. Why do they not show Radar's hand? Or which one of Radar's hand do they never show and why?
It's his left hand is deformed. It was deformed. So the only reason they didn't show it is because he wouldn't have been allowed in the army with it as a result. So he always has that hidden, but it's a real small hand. Yeah, I actually saw some episodes where somebody took a still and you could see it, and it's really quite small. So there's the drawer. Okay, so this is going to be a pencil and pen drawer. So that'll be closed like that. Customer won't even know. For these ones, you reach in underneath and lift it like that. So I'll pull this out and show you. This is one of the coolest pieces we've ever built. We've been at it for 3 years. Not quite. There's a hole underneath here, okay? And there's a little wooden V that we put on here. So when this is closed, again, we just decided that there was, you know, if you look real close, now this hasn't been sprayed yet, and this is oxidized. So you'll see that it looks two different colors, but when it's all done up, it'll hide because it's all one piece of wood. So the idea is that to open up this little drawer, you just puff. Wait a minute now. Sorry. We're coming up with a way of creating a airtight. Were you focusing on that when it came out?
Well, I was looking at it, yeah.
Yeah. And then you have your drawer. That'll close. Okay. So over here, we trying to keep everything, remember everything and where it belongs. We built this one and accidentally got that drawer front turned inside out. Built the whole thing, put it in, I was like, oh my goodness, why doesn't that look right? And that's when we discovered that the problem that Jake had done. So we had...
That one puffs really well.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that. So what we had to do, and there's a little stop in here, that face should have been out here. So we had to go in and remove a 1/16 of an inch off of all of this. Remember, this is already finished. And here's the result. So we took this piece of wood. That piece out of here is this drawer front that had to be glued back on there. and glue that all back on and redo it and yada yada. It was a lot of work. In making the drawer front, or pardon me, on making the drawer front over here, I have a little piece of brass that hangs down in there, and that's how it keeps the drawer from coming out. We were building this one, and we screwed up on the drawer, and it was twisted. So I had to start over, build a new drawer, cut the drawer front off of that drawer, proof. Haven't brought myself to throwing it away yet. There's the drawer we screwed up on. So we cut the drawer front off and glued it back onto this piece so we could salvage that drawer front and maintain that continuity along the front. And then inside here, so this is where we have yet to make our little dividers that will be movable, and they'll be T-shaped, so you can change them around. It has a wooden hinge, if you notice, when you open the lid. See how the hinge goes? And then in here, this is really cool too. Same idea. Now these I wanted to be able to come out because I envisioned stuff in there that you would actually come out and have it. So there's a little finger hole in here with a little V on the bottom. Oh, shoot. Oh. I should stop. I should just quit while I'm ahead. But when these are closed, they're, as somebody said, hidden in plain sight. And since we went through the work to do that, we didn't want to interrupt it with a drawer front. Pardon me, a drawer knob. So that's why we came up with this method of doing it. Lots of dovetails everywhere through wedge tenons. Holly is the secondary wood. So the white that you see is holly.
That's probably pretty rare.
Very rare.
That holly takes a backseat to something.
Yeah, and holly for the drawer sides as well. Lovely piece. Absolute lovely piece. And I'm not boasting. I said the fun of doing it. So here's what I want to show you. We've had folks that have wanted to help with Purple Heart projects, and they've been doing things like donating, sending us stuff and saying, here, Rob, this is for you, auction it off. So tell me his name, Jake.
Keith Cole.
Keith Cole from Minnesota?
No, Michigan.
Michigan.
Battle Creek.
Battle Creek sent us this. This is a shaker box. This is a number 8 shaker box. It's signed on the bottom. This is made out of cherry and bird's eye maple. Beautiful piece. I just think it's fantastic. And when you take the lid off, if you don't know anything about shaker oval boxes, look it up. It's really cool. So it has a removable tray. Again, shaker boxes with the swallowtails. And I think the bidding is up to $250 on this. Oh yeah, my wife did. So please beat it. Danny Bell got beat. So if you're interested, just put it in the chat section. Then they'll tell you how to comment, get a hold of us. So that's up for sale. Actually, let's stop there. Go back and do some more work. I'm going to come back and introduce you to 2 more things that you're going to want to see. Where are we, Frick?
For what?
Numbers.
476.
Okay, so when are we going to bring
About 10 minutes.
Kevin on? Okay.
What does the BJ stand for in BJ Honeycutt?
His mother's name was B, and his father's name was J. BJ. And as Hawkeye said, nobody would name their kid that. Please, somebody come up with something tough.
Again.
Except for Radar's mouse's name. And don't throw Private Lamb after me because I already know that one. What are we doing, Jake? Oh, we're about to do the... All right, so if you haven't followed along on this new dovetail technique, watch closely because it is... this technique has resulted in our average in our class going from 3 out of 12 students having great dovetails at the end of a day.
Wait, which one are you
to
cutting?
8 or 9. Pardon?
Are you cutting the backs or the fronts?
What do you want me to do? We'll do the backs first. Okay, so here we go. Get a good shot here so we understand. I like to always bring this back around so that we know exactly what we're doing. Check and make sure top left, top right, top left, top right. So this is going to go on like that. I need to have that nice and clean. You'll remember, if you don't remember, we cut rabbets. Little babettes in the end of our board so that when they come together like this, they register, and that holds that piece perfectly in place. Now, we're going to register off the top of this, so I got to make sure I keep this in proper
top?
order. We have to on this one.
Why?
Oh, we can register off the bottom. That's
Because you
right
kept
too.
the
That's
bottom
right too.
there.
That's right too. We kept it full. We're going to cut it later. So good point. So on a drawer, now mind you, this is a side hung, so it doesn't really apply. But typically in drawer construction, it's your bottoms that don't get messed with. Once you've established the bottom and planed that off, you never change the bottom again. Any fitting comes on the top. So when it comes to this particular type of dovetail layout, you always want to reference, excuse me, off of the bottom. So I'm going to take this, it's going just together like that. I'm going to put it like this, put this in the vise, prop it up so that the top of the board is flush with the top of the plane. Set that back. Now, before I do, and that's going to sit on there just like that, before I do anything, we need to go in and we need to measure the thickness of our saw kerf. Saw kerf includes the saw plate, that's what this is, and the set. Every tooth is bent. And typically, if the first tooth is bent to the left, the next tooth is bent to the right. Left, right, left, right. So that when you cut into the wood, you leave a groove or a kerf a little bit wider than the blade so it will not jam. What we're going to do is measure that by setting it on a flat surface. Take my marking gauge. This is the reason why if you place an order and I call and talk to you about marking gauges, this has to be precise. Set my marking gauge on the saw. I'm not resting it on the plane and on the saw, just on the saw. So all the weight is on my left thumb. I like to hear it drop and touch so I know where it is. Lock that. Remove it. Now, that blade is sticking up above the head of this tool by the thickness of one saw kerf, which, because I built these things, is 24 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going to set this on here. Now I'm also using my dovetail marking knife. So what we did, this has been my dovetail marking knife I've used for years. We added to it, you take it apart, this is made out of metal. If you take it apart, there's a spot in there to keep the traditional blade. But we now have what's called a sawtooth blade. And that blade and set is exactly the same as the dovetail saw. So when we do this, by setting that blade in that kerf, we don't have any slop. All right, so what we're going to do, there's how the little rabbit registers the two pieces, so it keeps them perfectly in line instead of me trying to feel it with my thumb. I'm going to set this first so that the head of the tool is resting on the bottom side, excuse me, of the drawer back. This will go on here, and I'm going to slide it over until it touches. Now what it's touching is the cutter. Jake, you're on the wrong side to see this. You need to be over here. I'm assuming there's some people that have never done this before. Okay, head of the tool, bottom edge, set that down, the cutter's up on the top. I put the piece on, I slide it over like that. Now, when I remove that, the difference right here is one saw kerf. Now, I've done this for however many years I forgot, and I still have to go through and do this. So what I want to do right now, and it's a good thing that Jake said do this one first because this is the confusing one. We have to identify which of these pieces is a tail. This is a tail. I'm going to put a T with a circle. Okay. Now, if that's a tail, this is a pin. If that's a tail, this is a pin. Then we're going to call this a tail. And if we go the other way, if that's a tail, pin, we're going to call this a tail. You'll see why. Okay, I just moved my tail board. This is the tail board, so in case you don't know that, your drawer sides are always going to be the piece, or should always be the piece that has the tails on it. So we call that the tailboard. I've moved my tailboard, I've offset it to my right. So I'm going to go to the left side of each tail and mark through the kerf into the pin board, leaving a kerf. So we offset this to the right, we go to the left. So the left of this tail is over here, so that doesn't matter. The left side of this tail is going to be right here. So reach down and pull through. Now I find it best that if you want to reach down, that's why it's shaped like that, so you can get right into that back corner. And then drop it down, because if you pick it through like that, sometimes you'll pull pieces of wood off the face of the pin board. I don't want to do that. Sometimes it'll happen regardless, but I think you're better off if you drop this down so that it is parallel to the end, meaning this, parallel to the top of the pin board. Now this is a tail, I just went to the left of that. This is a pin, this is a tail, so the left of that is going to be right here. Now by the way, just this week I saw a in fact a perfect set of dovetails cut by one Super David Benson. And I was thoroughly impressed, Soup. Jake brought them in and showed them to me. He said, look what Michelle did, and Dave put his name on it. Tail, pin, tail. So we'll go up here. Now I'm doing this several times, just you'll see why momentarily. Okay, now we've got to do the other side. So what I've got to do now, the easiest way to do this is I'm going to balance. That's a fairly large diameter cutter. In fact, in our marking gauges, if you look, we have several different size cutters. How many in total? 4? 3/8, 7/16, half, and 5/8. So that one's big enough. You could use this one if you wanted to. That's the 5/8 one. But it's big enough that in this particularly awkward operation, I can actually set it on there because I now want to move this tailboard to my left. And I need to register the cutter on the side of the tailboard, the pin board, so I can move this over, and in moving it over, it's going to go and over until it touches the head of the marking gauge, which will offset it by one saw kerf to my left. And if this is a little confusing, don't worry, I've been doing it for 5 years, this particular method, and it still confuses me, but the results are worth it. So since we moved the tailboard to the left, we're going to go to the right side of each tail. So this is a tail. So we'll go in. This is actually where we're going to end up cutting off the bottom. And this is a tail, so we're going to go to the right side of it.
You want a question?
Yeah.
Well, we also reached our first 1,000.
Excellent. So we're giving away at least one $100 gift certificate.
All right, this mash question comes from Dennis. What cuties were listed on the sign in the mash yard that showed distance?
What, cuties?
I don't. That might be a typo by Luther. It doesn't make sense. What?
Oh,
Oh, if it was Luther?
what cities?
Oh, cities. Well, I know San Francisco was on there, and Boston would have been on there because all the MASH people have put there. And
Crabapple Cove.
Crabapple Cove, Maine. I don't know if that was on there or not. But who else would have been on there?
Honolulu was on there.
Honolulu, yeah, because she just died
Nurse
too.
Kelly.
Nurse Kelly. She died young. She was only early 70s. Frank was from where?
He was in Indiana somewhere.
Yeah. Indiana. Whereabouts? I have customers from there. I always ask them
Fort
about
Wayne.
Fort Wayne, Indiana. Yeah. Chicago would have been on there. And then Klinger was from Toledo, so that would have been on there. I actually got to watch a Mud Hens game last time we were in Ohio.
And Radar was from
Tumwa, Iowa. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that. And you see what you got? Now, if you're seeing this for the first time, you should be saying, oh, cool. Because in the past, we would have removed the waste, taken a very sharp knife, and traced around the tail in the end grain of the pin board with a very, very fine, sharp knife. And the problem was it was so hard to see. And then you had to decide, where should I be putting my saw in relation to that knife line to get this right? And a mistake was deadly. Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore, because now we actually have the ability to set our saw right in the kerf and finish the cut. Now, oh, you know what? I never put the gauge lines on there. That was dumb of me. So here's what I need to do. I've got to come in, and we're going to, right here, because we've reduced the thickness of the sides out here because of the rabbet, I'm going to come in and I'm going to measure the thickness of the drawer side with my marking gauge. Jake, what's that set for?
Wait, why don't you set it off of your pin board, of your drawer front?
Huh?
Why don't you set this off of your drawer front
Why?
so that it's the same measurement as that?
Well, it's going to be. You're not following me. Hold
Well-
on. I haven't done the drawer front.
I haven't done anything.
No, I haven't done it. So what I'm going to do here is I want my marking gauge to represent just a slight bit less than the thickness of the drawer side, but not out here, right here at the joint. So I'm going to reference from the outside, and I'm going to set it so that the cutter is just a little bit less than the thickness. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's probably 64th, okay? And you'll see why we do that. Now, I forgot to do this. So what I need to do with that setting, I need to come in here and I need to scribe the two faces and the top edge, you'll see why, of the drawer back. So
You can do all four, can't you?
Inside, top edge, back side. Make this one nice and deep. And then the only place this goes on the drawer front is on the inside. Now, if you want to, you can actually come in here and you can, just going to get rid of that fuzz, you can put some reference lines on this that'll make it a little bit easier to follow, but I'm going to show you something when we start cutting why you really don't even have to do that. So this is a big time saver. So I'm going to use my gauge to come in here. Pardon?
It has a 0 on it.
Yeah, I know. I'm just think for a second. What are we keeping? We're keeping this piece. So this is waist. This is waist. Remember, this is going to be the opposite. So if you need, take your drawer side and set it up here, and your waist is going to be opposite of the part you're keeping. X's represent the waist. Well, I'm going to keep them down here. So this is going to be wasted, and this is going to be wasted. Now, when I come in to drop my reference lines, I want to keep the reference. See, so this has width. This kerf has width. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my line to the good side or the keeper side of that saw kerf, if you want to get really technical. Any more mash?
I'm getting Luther to send me the best ones. There is quite a few.
Glad to hear. I'm in the right age bracket or we got the right age group out there.
What is Colonel Potter's horse's name?
Sophie.
I guess you only get stumped on some of the animals' names.
Yes. Horses should have been the one. Now, Colonel Blake had 2 wives. Or he had one wife, but 2 different names. Season 1, season 2. Okay, let's go talk to Kev.
Well, you You gotta
Oh,
tell
so I
Frank
thought
to
you had
do
them ready. Okay. All right, then come over here, Jake. I want to show you something else.
Okay.
So we did, who does our infuse?
Sean.
Sean Mahaffey, friend of ours for a long time, does our resin impregnating. So in case you don't know what that means, our mallet heads are maple, and they dry it out. They put it in a vacuum chamber, and they replace the air that is naturally found in the wood with a resin. They do it under a vacuum, which really makes it heavy and hard. I also have him, he does some handles for us. So I'll show you. I just finished one for, who did I just finish this one for, Jake?
Philip Boyd,
Philip Boyd in Independence, Missouri.
Kansas.
Independence, Kansas. Sorry, Philip.
Because everyone
Okay.
else thinks it's
So this is a piece of maple that has been resin impregnated, and when you buff it up, it just turns into glass. Strong, heavy. Well, you can also add color. So Sean got the color of the Purple Heart Award, and he did some resin impregnating. So this is a piece of maple that has been purple infused, resin impregnated. And this is a dovetail saw. And the first time we did this, we sold 2 of these for $1,500 each. So then the next time we did the online broadcast, this is what we're doing right now, we decided to give this off. This was drawn as one of the prizes. And the fellow, I wish I remembered his name. Sorry. It's so nice of him. Maybe he doesn't even want to be recognized that way. But anyway, he was very generous. He sent it back to me because we accidentally sent it to him. And he said, Rob, I would like to donate that back as a fundraiser for the Purple Heart Project, and I will start the bidding at $1,100. So this is a dovetail saw with purple infused resin impregnated. Now, what's really nice about that, unlike Purple Heart, that color won't change, and it'll be that purple until it's done.
All right, we got Kevin ready.
Okay? So if anybody wants to up that bid, let us know. Beautiful. Okay, so Kevin was in class number, how far back? Well, he was in the class when we taught it in Niagara Falls. I'll let him tell you. And we stayed in touch all this time. And I asked him if he would come on tonight and just kind of give you his take on the Purple Heart Project from his perspective. He can tell you whatever he wants to tell you. Kev, it's all yours, brother.
All right, appreciate it, Rob. Hope you guys can hear me pretty well.
Oh, just a second. I'm going to turn you up there. There you go.
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Is it better?
Yep.
All right. So Rob and I reached out to each other. Gosh, it's probably been about 4.5 or maybe 5 years ago now. I was inquiring about some tools from Rob at a veterans discount or something. And without hesitation, Rob said, well, I can do some tool things for you, but let me tell you about something else that we've just got going. And so that's kind of how my introduction to the Purple Heart Project with Rob and Jake and the rest of the group kind of started, was that. And, as Rob said, and everybody that's come on has said, it's a great trip for everyone involved. It was really fun. It was, got good, cool tools and everything out of it, but it was just, it's so much more than that. And on the interview that Rob and I did, 3 years ago, whenever it was, he asked me, what were your expectations coming up here, and what were you expecting to get out of this? And obviously, the standard answers of learning how to hand cut a dovetail or learning how to S4S a piece of wood or something, those are all expectations you expect. But what I didn't really realize that I was going to get out of it was camaraderie and friendship, and just the overall sense of belonging in a group that was like-minded individuals that were really there for one purpose and one purpose only. And it had absolutely nothing to do with woodworking. That just happened to be the conduit that Rob chose to get all the people together. I think in my class there were 12 of us. I think 11 of us were actually veterans or maybe wounded veterans. There were obviously the 6 that were chosen, but the other 5 were either veterans or wounded veterans as well. So that made a big impact on my class, and I can't speak for the rest of the classes either, but it really just was an eye-opening experience for me and for my family. I did almost 20 years in the military. I'm a service-connected disabled vet now. Got a couple of deployments under my belt. stepped foot on 5 of the 7 continents thanks to the military. And it's just, a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that nobody ever understands or nobody wants to talk about, those things go on in my head as well. My roommate was a gentleman named Austin Reese. Austin was a Navy guy. Austin decided that at some point in time, as he was jumping out of an airplane, he told his parachute that he didn't want it to work anymore. And so he burned in the ground at, more than about 3 miles an hour. So Austin was I don't know if it was paraplegic or quadriplegic. I can't remember. It must have been para. Anyway, Luther said, he said, hey, will you room with this guy? And I had never met Luther either. And I said, yeah, it's not a big deal. And so as soon as Austin showed up, I started giving him a hard time about not being able to use his legs. And it was just, one of those things that we just kind of stuck up and had a good friendship from the beginning. So just bringing everything together and bringing all the people together was really great and enjoyable. I could sit here and say thank you to a bunch of different people. But number one, I don't know all the people that were involved in getting us there. Number two, I wouldn't want to leave somebody out. I will thank my family, and I will thank Rob and his family, because what they've done for me personally has been just really good. There's been a lot of days that were dark and depressing, and there were a lot of times that I wondered whether or not, that it was worth continuing to go on, not necessarily from a suicidal standpoint, but if it was worth continuing just doing what I was doing. And Rob really kind of helped me open my eyes up to realize that there was more than just kind of what was going on in my head and the demons that I struggle with inside my own body. I remember during the class at one point in time, one of the tasks, one of the tasks we're supposed to do is take this piece of rough wood and surface it down. And Rob said, take it down to like 3/4 or something like that. And so I'm just steadily planing away, got the 5.5 tuned up. Everything's good to go. And Rob walked by and he said, you're down to about, I don't know, maybe a 1/2 inch or so right now. I said, yeah, it just felt so good and calming to just continue to plane. And he said, you can play and make all the shape you want to. We've got more wood. And I probably can speak for quite a few of the other veterans, at least from a mental standpoint, that putting a hand plane in your wood and watching something organic come out of that throat that you've done, and understand that you can control this, it just gives you more of a sense of combining yourself with something else, something bigger, something greater. And it did a lot more for me than any kind of medication or any kind of therapy or anything like that ever did for me. I wasn't necessarily in a bad place before. I wasn't in a good place, but I wasn't necessarily in a bad place. But the friendship that Rob and Jake and I have struck up has been really, really instrumental to my well-being. I don't want to say the same for Luther, because Luther is just Luther, but he is what he is. But I did tell Rob this morning on the telephone that I wish I could find some boiled peanuts here real quick so I could eat them in front of Luther while he was on the computer, but I couldn't find any boiled peanuts on a short notice. So
Probably a good thing.
Probably so. But, for anybody out there watching and wondering whether you're a veteran or whether you're a subscriber to Rob's channel, or whether you're, deciding on whether or not you want to donate anything, it takes a lot of money. And I know Rob always says it, and he says, we'll find the money somewhere, and that's fine. And I understand that, and I appreciate Rob's willingness and stuff like that. But just know that whatever you decide to donate, whether it be 50 cents or $50,000, whatever you decide to donate comes to help someone like me. It goes to help someone like Danny Bell or Super Dave Benson or Kevin Burris or any of the other guys that Rob always mentions. It helps us in ways that you have absolutely no idea what it does. Sure, it gave me some tools. Sure, it gave me a class where I could learn how to do something with those tools. But it's so much more than that. It's so much more than a physical, tangible thing that you can get. And, I can't thank Rob and his family enough for doing what it was doing. A couple of people I would think by name is Jesse Paredes. Without Jesse, we probably, I don't want to say we wouldn't have what we have now, but without Jesse, we wouldn't have what we have now. But I'm sure Rob would have found some other way to do something, but because of Jesse, we are where we are now. I'm not going to call anybody out by name except for George Barber. I will call George out by name. I've had the pleasure of meeting George and talking with George. George is a great guy. If you ever find yourself in the Knoxville, Tennessee area and are close to the Woodcraft on a Monday through Friday, go find George. Go tell him what he means to people like us, because he's a big donor and a big supporter, and he is very, very special to Rob and his family as well. I know there's 100,000 other people out there that I could thank by name, but I really won't. Like I said, I don't want to get don't want to start leaving people off. There's a lot of people out there that help Rob. There's a lot of people out there that call. Tom Lee Nielsen's one. Hey, Tom Lee, yep, no problem. What do you need? We'll do it. So support the people that help support us. So if you're in Knoxville and you need something from Woodcraft, go to Woodcraft and buy it from Woodcraft. Yeah, you can probably get it on the internet cheaper. You can probably get it faster. Doesn't matter. Buy some Lee Nielsen tools. Tom Lee Nielsen supports this program. Go buy Lee Nielsen tools. Buy everything in Rob's shop. It helps support the program. I'm just telling you, you have absolutely no idea what this does for us other than what you can see and what you hear from us. That's all you can tell.
Thanks, Kev. That was fantastic. Appreciate you.
No worries.
Appreciate you putting that so very concisely and from the heart.
You're welcome, Rob. I appreciate you.
All right, so sit back and enjoy the rest of the show.
Will do. See you guys soon.
All right, thanks, Kev.
All right. Yep.
I hope you guys enjoy getting to hear from these guys, because I certainly do. It's nice to be able to get in touch with them again. All right, let's go in here, and I want to make sure that this is standing plumb, which I already did. So now what I want to show you is, instead of having to struggle with a knife line, all I have to do is set the saw in that kerf that was already started, and if I have a light enough touch, and more importantly, if these cuts were made, pardon me, which one was it? We did this one. If these cuts were made perpendicular across the end, then when you put the knife in there, that's going to continue plumb down the face of this one. And that's why it's so critical, one of the reasons why it's so critical, that those cuts on the end of the tailboard be right on the money. Now you can also follow the pencil line if you want, but I just like to have a really, really light touch. Let that little saw curve guide. That's actually going to get cut off. Don't try to overpower it. Super light touch on the saw. Okay, now I need my fret saw. We'll go in here and we'll remove. You have to rethink it before you cut. Identify your waste so you know you're removing the correct piece. I'll do this one on the outside with a dovetail saw. Drop that down to the bottom, come just off the bottom, turn, and try to use this fret saw to cut as close to that line as you can. Reduces the amount of work you have to do with a chisel. Okay, so let's flip this over. Get the other side. Repeat the process. I can do it a little bit quicker, because I don't have to explain it all the second time. Any questions, Frick?
You want a mash question?
Sure. Love them.
What fake company did Hawkeye and Trapper convince Frank to invest in?
That's a good one. Oh, shoot. Pioneer. Was it Pioneer?
Aviation.
Pioneer Aviation? Pioneer Aviation. I'm going to go with that. Where are we? Top right. So, top left. So here we are. Set this in place. This one's a little bit easier because now I get to work on my right side. There's my marking gauge. This is the reason why. If you're wondering why you need why I'm always telling people 2 marking gauges, every time you have to reset that, you have a chance for error. Set it once, and if you got it right, then they're all going to be right. If you got it wrong, they're all going to be screwed up, but if that makes sense. At least you're not having to switch back and forth. Referencing off of the bottom, cutter in place. Now again, we got to go in here and identify tail, 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 tail. Now this really isn't a tail, that really isn't a tail, but it has to be treated as such in order for me to think this through properly. So we've offset to my left. I'm going to go to the right side of each tail. Obviously there's nothing here. This one will be right here. Now I'm pulling this rather easily because that piece of wood is sticking up 3 inches above the vise, and it's not terribly sturdy, so I don't want to cause it to bounce. Go to the right side, oops, of the next one. And as I said, we call this a tail. Okay, now on this one, remember, we're going to balance on the side. Got to keep the cutter down low so it's out of the way. Then we slide it over. Slide over until it touches the cutter head. So now we've offset to my right, so we're going to go to the left side of each tail. This is actually where it's going to be cut off. So left side of each tail is this one. And this one. Okay. Now, I'm not going to bother because those cuts are deep enough. So I'm just going to simply, remember this one's going to get cut off anyway, so I don't need to do it with the saw. I'm just going to put my saw in there and make the cut to the bottom. Is Loren on tonight?
I haven't seen her, no.
She's mad at me. Okay, we made all these. Did I get this one down? Yep. Okay, now we'll go in here, identify our waist. This is waist, this is waist, waist, waist. Identify on the front, since that's the part that you tend to look at when you're fret sawing. Drop our fret saw down. Now remember, when you use the fret saw, we've twisted the blade. In order to increase the capacity of this saw, beyond the 3-inch depth of throat, when you put the blade in, you take a pair of pliers, grab it right here, give it a little twist right there where it leaves the clamp, same thing up here. Now when you make a horizontal cut, the frame actually stays up like this because the blade has been twisted and you have no restriction. So when you're putting it down this kerf, you don't want to mess up the sides of the kerf. You have to lay that over until that will now drop down. Get to the bottom, come just off the bottom, and turn and saw. Okay. Now, let's finish processing this. How are our numbers, Rick?
We only have 507. Slow night tonight.
Oh, it is. Was that because of our slow start?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Of course not. Okay, so I'm going to cut off these little pieces. I'm going to come in with my chisel, and I'm going to make a little trough. We'll do both sides while I have my chisel in hand. The trough starts in the waist and goes up to the line. You got to have a light touch. You don't want to blow by it. And then we're going to cut this off. Now, this is not a very deep cut, so careful. Plumb cut. Careful, careful, so that you don't end up blowing down into your first pin. Okay, we'll cut the bottom off. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab my 17 degree, which is the ideal setup for dealing with softwood like this. That's actually nice and clean, so I don't have to worry about that one. Do this. Now, I had a really interesting conversation today with a guy named David Briggs. I'm going to stop for a second and tell you about it. I'll do some more of this first. I'm going to get my 1/4 inch. This is my 1/4 inch 17 degree. I need a backup block. Now, when I'm working my 17-degree chisels, I make sure my backup block is something really soft. I don't want to be slamming into a piece of MDF with this fragile edge because I'll lose the edge. So I'm using a piece of very soft pine.
Cedar.
Huh?
Cedar.
Yeah. This
You
is
said
pine.
You said
This is cedar, yeah. Northern white cedar, very soft. Cutting pine. So what I'm going to do, a little bit excess there, so I'm going to cut back here, get it started before I set the chisel right in the gauge line. The reason why you want a good marking gauge. There's no guessing where the chisel should be sitting because the gauge line holds it fast. Now, before I flip it over, I'll swip around and do this side. How are our donations, Megan?
We've had several.
Pardon?
We've had several pretty generous donations. We've had a lot of $100 donations and several $250 donations. So that's been really good.
How much are we
But
giving away?
We still haven't hit the 2,000 mark.
No, so. No, people can't
But
give
thank
all
you
the
everyone
time.
for donating.
Pardon?
I just was thanking everyone for their donation.
Absolutely. Now, when I chop on these, I'm getting right in tight to the pin. That's right here. But as I start to chop, I'm going to angle the chisel forward so that I can follow the slope of the pin, and it may eliminate the necessity to go in and clean up any more if I get the slope right. And it's usually just a bit of a guess, but be surprised at how accurate you can get with that in time. Love working this wood. It's just so, it is soft, but it's so warm. It's just dandy stuff. Speaking of wood, as I was telling you about Briggs maple. So back several years ago, I decided as a nice gesture and a way to Canadianize our response to our customers, that if anybody placed an order, we would include in that order a little bottle, a 40 ml bottle of maple syrup, enough for one pancake, unless you're Lutheran, it'll last you for about 6 months. And the response, we started doing it again just recently, and the response was people loved it. And some people will start going on there and telling you about it. It is the best tasting maple syrup. It is the best tasting maple syrup. It's dark. So maple syrup that you typically buy is of the lighter variety so that it appeals to more people. But if you're a real lover of wood, maple in particular, you're going to find this is the best tasting dark maple syrup you've ever had. So we decided, since so many people wanted it, that we would start offering it for sale. And the response has been phenomenal. Michael how do you pronounce Michael's last name? Colcroft chugs it. So look over here. So this is our little display I made. So here's maple. So this is sugar maple, also called hard maple. This happens to be the bird's eye variety. If you think about all the things that we get out of wood, beautiful wood, nice and white. This has got some pretty good bird's eye, but this one is a piece of AAA bird's eye that I got from Mel. And if you look real close, this is what it looks like in the rough. And all these little swirly marks, that is the bird's eye. So when this is surfaced, this will be polluted with bird's eyes. Well, that same tree, I had a long conversation with Dave today. That same tree in the spring, usually in early March, the sap starts to run up the tree. Now it runs in the outer layer, so There's heartwood in the middle, sapwood on the outside, and sapwood is the part that's still alive, and that's where the nutrients go up into to fuel the growth of the tree. And if you have cold nights with warm sunny days, the sap runs. And the sap of a maple tree, a sugar maple tree, has a much higher sugar content in the water or the sap than other species. Sugar maples can be anywhere from 1 to 3, maybe even as much as 4% sugar. And as a kid, my father used to tap trees just for the fun of it, and there was nothing like drinking right out of the can, the cold sap in the morning. It was absolutely delicious. You can actually buy sap. Well, so this Briggs Maples, which is a Canadian company in New Brunswick. I'll just hit some of the highlights. They've been making maple syrup for 6 generations. David Briggs' great-great-grandfather, Arthur McNutt Briggs, born in 1852, he started the process of tapping maple trees, boiling the syrup, and selling it to customers. And the business has carried on ever since. It's changed, it's incorporated, and it's gotten bigger. And today they actually sell maple syrup tapping products as well. But he has this dark syrup. Not all of the syrup is dark, but this stuff is. These are actually these are all sold. So now we're carrying the 250 ml bottle and the 500 ml bottle. And it's just fantastic. So go on our site. Luther will put a link in there, and you can get some of this. And I promise you that if you don't like maple syrup, you'll love this. And if you like maple syrup, you'll absolutely go nuts over this stuff. It is to live for.
Luther quit, so I will...
Luther quit?
Yeah.
Why? Did he get insulted?
No, he had to drive his friend to the hospital, I guess.
Oh, right. He has a friend who's getting cancer treatments. Okay, so I'm going to leave this as it is. The last thing we'll do is cut that piece off, but I'm going to wait on that. We're going to go in here and process the half blind next. So this is my top right corner. Same idea. It's going to be a little bit different though, because now we're dealing with a half blind. I just put that on there so I could more readily get that flush with the top of the plane. If there's any vets watching that have been to our class, our scholarship, and they would like a bench, the bench brigade has some extra benches. We're doing this in stages, so we can outfit you with a bench that will be shipped to you, no cost. And the folks that are doing it are absolutely thrilled to be able to do it. So if I haven't got to you yet, please reach out to me. So now we've got... Got to make sure that you want to make sure when you do this that you don't have any debris up against that little shoulder, because it's important that that shoulder rest nice and tight against the inside corner of that pin board. And you'll also remember that I undercut these. So you see how these saw cuts came down lower? Well, the reason is this. When I set this in place, this is going to allow me to get my dovetail marking knife in behind this edge. So when you see though, when I remove this, you'll see the little saw kerfs have actually started right out here. If you don't do that, they end up starting in about a 32nd, and now when you cut from this side, you have to try to line it up with the saw. It'll be more apparent shortly. Let's see if we can get through this one before the show's over. So referencing off the side, cutter on the top, put that piece in there, make sure it slides freely, slide over, touch, and then set that off. Now, I'm going to take my dovetail mark knife. This one's a little bit tricky because I don't want to cross my end lap. You don't want saw kerfs on your end lap. And this tail pin board, known as the drawer front, has already been cut and planed to length. I can't take any off of this to clean it up. That's the reason why we set the marking gauge to be a little less than the thickness of the drawer side. So when we assemble this, this will be proud of those pins. and that'll allow us to plane it down, and when we get down to where we touch the pins front and back, then we're done. So, got to be really careful here, and it's tricky. So I've offset to my left. I'm going to go to the right. We'll go ahead and mark each tail with a T. So I'm going to go to the right side. I'm reaching in there so that I'm getting down in, and I'm just going to work it. And I find in this case, it's a little easier if I use my thumb, my right thumb to anchor it. And I just pull that back and forth, or watching to make sure I don't accidentally cut into that end lap. I'll go over to this one. Any more vets on, Megan? I haven't heard. Patty Tack.
And Paul Morrison.
Paul.
And we also received a generous donation of $500. So
nice.
we reached the 2,000.
Thank you. That's $200 gift certificates we'll give away. Okay, I did all three, so I'm going to move this off and see if I got the line kerf over far enough. If I didn't, we'll have to put this back. Okay, so I really don't like this. See, I've stopped right here. I've stopped way up here, and wow, this one is way up here. Well, that just means when I start sawing from this side, I really don't have a whole lot, but you will notice that I'm all the way through it here, which is going to make it a lot easier. But because that is not as far over as I want, I'm going to put this back on. Got to be really careful to make sure you do this right. Put that back in there. And you just have to, one of the advantages of wearing these magnifiers is you can see even closer. No, I got to do this like this. We're about to get some new dovetail blades that are going to be 22 TPI, and I think it might just work in situations like this a little bit better. Funny, it looks like I'm closer. Well, I'm as close as I want to get on those. I'm going to stop there. That's close enough. Okay, so on this one, we're going to rest the cutter on the side. Going to move that all the way over. Wasn't down far enough. Move it all the way over until it touches. So now we went to my right. We offset to my right. We're going to go to the left side of each tail. This would be the left side. Remember, any questions, let us have them. Did I win the mass challenge, Frick?
I guess.
Gone quiet on that front.
Luther was sending me the questions, but now he's gone. Let me just see if I can find one.
Okay, so we're right to here on this one. We're right to there. So that's good. Okay, so we'll set this aside. Now, when we do a half blind, you got to turn this around. I also have to lift it up a little bit higher. You'll see why. I want that standing plumb. Lock it in place. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to carry these lines down. First thing I want to do is just get rid of this. What's the matter, Jake?
Nothing. Don't
Speak out
worry.
loud. Okay, so let's make sure we understand what we're doing here. This is waist, waist, waist. I'm going to transfer it down here, waist, waist, and waist. Now I'm going to keep my line on the good side of the kerf. Reason is, as you cut down the board, if you have your line in the middle of the kerf, you're going to cut it off and you lose your reference. But if you stay on the side of the kerf that you're keeping, meaning I make my saw cut down here. If this line is on this side of the kerf, I can follow it by cutting all the way down. If I put it in the middle, I'm going to cut through it. Okay, this requires a really, really light touch. So, and again, this is what I was telling you about. If I had not been able to get this saw kerf coming all the way down to here, I'd be sitting here trying to line up, because the kerf mark I would have made, excuse me, this is waste anyway. My kerf mark I would have made this is not working too well, but my kerf mark would have been in here, and I'd be over here trying to make sure that that saw started and continued in there. But because it's all the way down the front, I can now put the saw right in that kerf, tip it forward so that it follows that line perfectly. Now, when you're doing this, you gotta watch two things. You gotta watch the top line here, and you gotta watch the bottom line here. I don't want to cut below. I especially don't want to cut below here, because that's going to show. That's going to be on your end lap. So set that in. Really light touch. You got to let that little kerf take over. Hard to watch two things at once.
How did BJ address Frank the very first time they met?
Well, he was drunk, and he says, "How you doing, or how's it going, ferret face?" And he fell down the front of him, holding onto his legs, and the two of them were laughing, and Hot Lips was flabbergasted.
What does MASH stand for?
Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. Does anybody have a hard question?
Yeah.
What?
What's the name of Radar's racing mouse?
Duh. All right. We've only got, well, I don't know, we can keep going. I'm going to go ahead and process this one now.
Wait.
What?
You're not done.
You want me to do this one too?
No, I want you to go back and finish that one.
What are you talking about?
Did you use the Kerf X10?
Oh, Jake, thank you. You little salesman, I've trained you so well. Okay, so, big secret about to be revealed. If I could find it. Where's my Kerf X10, Jake? Did you sell that too?
Yep. Well, keep looking. It's not there. But there is one right there.
Where?
In front of your face.
I'm looking.
White tube.
White tube. Oh. So here's this will take the rest of the day to explain. Got to get the oil off of this. Oh, we have some seconds.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah, we do. Dovetail sauce.
I sold one to
seconds.
Mark, and that's another. Oh, Dovetail sauce second?
Yeah.
Is Mark here?
Yeah, Mark's on. He said he was going to be.
We'll say hello.
What's the name of Radar's imaginary friend in school?
That's not good with names.
Whoa. You got me on that one. You make that up?
No, that's from Ed Dupree.
Oh, Ed, you got me. I'll turn the crown over to you. Okay. So, Mark. Hello, Mark. See you here Monday morning, brother. We got lots of work to do. Mark's been, if it wasn't for Mark, we would never be ready for our classes in the summer. Mark's doing all the construction for us. Okay, so here's the problem. You just witnessed that we were only able to saw on an angle like this. That means we were able to get this cut started and take it from this line to that line, which essentially leaves the other half undone. So if you were to look down here, Jake, if you were to look down here, this is what we need to remove, right? and we were only able to do this, cutting on a corner. So traditionally what we would do is now we'd hog out all this material with a chisel, and we would go in and we would carefully carve away to finish right down to that back wall, and then along here on the base of the socket. A lot of work, a lot of time. My saw kerf is 24 thousandths of an inch. Our tool called a Kerf X10 is 25 thousandths of an inch. Flattened off, not sharpened to a point, but actually flat. And what that's going to allow us to do using a mallet is we're going to be able to go in here like this and push that down in there and then tap it. And in the process of doing that, what will occur is it will actually finish the cut by forcing those fibers. It's pretty amazing how it works. Now when I do an outside half pin, I'll do it in 3 or 4 passes. I'm looking carefully to make sure I'm going down to the line, and then I'll go right to the back. So I'm right at the gauge line. Now, on the outside ones, I'm careful to do it in 3 or 4 steps, a little bit at a time. On these interior ones, I'll do it 2 steps because there's lots of wood supporting, and you don't have to worry about causing a split. And the very action of this tool means it doesn't cause a split anyway. The only time I've ever had a problem is if the grain right here at the edge was running sharply off to the side like that, and that would almost always end up in a split. And if you do have a situation like that, it's best to run a clamp right here at the base while you're doing this, and everything should be fine. Okay, let's come this way. I like to force it in by hand first before I start pounding on it to make sure it's where I want it to be. Radar's an imaginary friend. I know Uncle Ed. I love the time he was writing his mother a letter, and he said, "Mom, I'm writing this slowly because I know you don't read very fast."
The answer is Shirley.
Shirley? Wow. Well, I'll make it a point to look that one up.
What was the name of the general that was also brought back as Potter?
Colonel Steele, 3 E's, not all in a row. Little crazy. Okay, so look at that close, Jake, so they see nice and clean how it is. This is without a doubt. Now, Fred taught me this principle. And by the way, this is a second if you want to buy it. And the reason it's a second is because when I was sanding them, I sanded through the Canada. So instead of, what are these? How much are these cost?
$120.
So instead of being $120, this is only $100. You want to speak for it, and I'll even sign the box and say screwed up by Rob. All right. So anyway, Fred taught me that. And what he would do was use a scraper blade. But you can't always get a scraper blade the same size as... What I like about this is with a 24th saw kerf, and this being 25, it just leaves those sidewalls nice and clean, and there's no remnant of that little shelf, that little angled shelf that is left from the saw stopping when you're cutting from marking gauge line to marking gauge line, if you follow me on that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and process this. So before I take that out, what I need to do is decide which chisel I'm going to use. I'll use this one. Flip it over on the back side. Have we got a Sharpie somewhere? I know I don't have one in there. Have we sold any t-shirts today? Anybody getting t-shirts?
There's a red one right there.
So I just drew that line so I know how far down I can chop, because when I do this, I want to get right to that end lap. It'll make it so much easier when it comes time to cleaning out that material. So working on the X. I'm going to step in here just a little bit, and I'm going to start chop. Whoops, what's going on here? Oh, it's okay. I'm going to start chopping, but I'm going to stop at about 2/3 the depth. I'm not going to go right to the line yet. And I'll keep chopping. Now that I'm in here, meaning I'm approximately, once you get 1/3, if you divide this in thirds, once I get in by a third, then I start going all the way so I eventually end up right here at the bottom. The problem is this: if you try to go all the way initially, the fibers break out ahead of the chisel point, and you'll end up making a mess and cutting down below your gauge line. Now that's not cutting nice and clean, so I need to put a quick edge on that. Let's do that. I'm using a coarse stone, in this case Jake's 500 grit. Now when you're doing these little narrow chisels, it's best to just do little wee short forward and back strokes. If you do circles like you do on a larger chisel, what will happen is you'll find that it's very easy to skew it. Instead of having a square edge, you'll end up having a skewed. Now, I don't want to take off my line. I got to. There goes my line. I knew I was going to lose it. Just watch the time for me. I've got to put this back on. So I'm right here at the baseline, and then I'm right here at the back side of the board. Double check that. That's where I want to be. So with each successive chop, I'm going to go a little deeper so that by the time I get to the baseline, I'll be full depth. So now I'm sitting in there. When you're dealing with soft wood like this pine, you just have to be really careful because it wouldn't take much to blow right through and end up coming out through your end lap. The reason why I like to use that small mallet on jobs like this. And by taking these little tiny bites, that material just turns into, it just crumbles, so it's a lot easier to deal with. This is an odd piece of wood, Jake.
Why?
Well, it keeps crumbling and breaking off, and the chisel sliding forward. Even with that 17 degree. How many more times can I hit that light? Have I got time to clean these sockets? No? Well, let's what are we? What time is it? 8:59. Is it really? Okay, we got to do our draw, but I just want to open up one of these so that you can see it. Now, when it comes to doing this, if you just take little pieces, it takes a few more chops, but your chisel doesn't get stuck, and you don't risk blowing off that end lap. Stay away from the outside perimeter so as not to mark it up. Any damage you do to that is going to show when you assemble your joint. Now I'm using my little half-blind chisel. We now make these, right, Jake? Mm-hmm. The small sizes. And this is going to allow me to get in there and cut right into the corner. One chisel does both corners. I'll just finish this one, and I'll have Jake come in and show you the side of the tail where the Kerf X10 left it so nice and clean. Now, you might want to have another backer board on there just so that you can push
I
a
don't
little
think that's
harder.
long enough, is it?
Yep, this is just long enough. Now, I just have to get into this corner. I'll do this one first because I'm positioned for it. Frick, what are you typing so fast and furious? Chatting?
Vehement.
Okay, so I'll get out of here and I'll let Jake show you. The bottom of the socket looks terrible, but it doesn't matter because it's sitting inside a joint and it's not an effective glue surface. But I wanted you to see how nice and clean it left those sidewalls. Great. If I'm cutting dovetail half blinds, I would not want to do them without those two tools. Anybody speak for that Kerf X10 second yet? Okay. All right. Let's do our draw.
Give me 2 seconds.
Okay. How many draws? How many are we doing? 2. So we're going to draw for $200 gift certificates. Don't forget your maple syrup. You'll be sweeter for it. Oh, Father's Day. What a great idea. Make them pancakes or French toast for breakfast with that on it. You'll become his favorite daughter or son. What's up?
When's Father's Day?
Father's Day next Sunday.
Next Sunday, not this one.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm ready.
Any final questions?
Does it make a difference which oil you use on your tools? What do you like about the camellia or the jojoba?
Well, the camellia is food safe. It's edible. So when you're spraying it or working on it, you're not using a petrochemical on your skin. So I'd much rather use that than any other oil. Cause just we work with it a lot. We're a lot of exposure to it.
All right, we're ready. So we're only doing 2?
Yeah.
All right, zoom in there, Jake.
First one.
Our first winner is Salvio Fusco, Italy.
Wow. Salvio?
Salvio.
Salvio, congratulations.
And second, John Serio from New York.
Hey, John. Congratulations. This episode has been brought to you by Yellow Cedar from BC. Gorgeous stuff.
Someone actually recommended that you put that in the package with whoever wins tonight, with whatever they purchased.
Oh, all right, we'll do that. Okay, thanks to Jake behind the camera, Megan on this side, Frick right there, Rex back there, Ken, Luther, Super Dave. Forgetting anybody?
Super Dave was never here.
Yeah, he wasn't on?
I didn't know.
Oh.
Retract that.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, we'll pull that back. Just a little bit less than Super Dave.
Not Super Dave.
All right, let's get on to him, please. Next Saturday is our question and answer. Always like that. Never know what to expect. The email will go out midweek and to give you a chance to put your question in. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell. So we release 2 videos, and you'll notice that they're a whole new look. Luther's been working his butt off on that. New thumbnails, the whole bit, trying to up our game with our YouTube channel. So like, subscribe, share it with anybody that you think might be interested in this. And we will see you here next Saturday night, 6 o'clock Eastern. Have a good week. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. See you soon.